Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. This is Dr. Singaram, pediatrician. So today I am going to discuss about neuroblastoma in this short video. I will also be telling you about some recent updates in this topic. As you all must be knowing, neuroblastoma is a solid tumor and the site of origin is usually from the adrenal gland. Now here note the word, it's a most common extracranial solid tumor, means it is outside the brain. Why this is important? Because whenever they talk about solid tumor, the most common solid tumor is intracranial or the brain tumors. Only if the question very specifically mentions extracranial solid tumor, your answer is going to be neuroblastoma. You also need to remember one more one-liner here. Neuroblastoma is also the most common intra-abdominal tumor. Please make a note of this because you may be knowing about one more intra-abdominal tumor which is Wilms tumor, but that is the second most common. Overall most common intra-abdominal tumor is Wilms tumor. Now talking about the age group of neuroblastoma, it is usually seen in children less than 4 years of age. Though most of the cases occur in the first 2 years itself, as a broad term you need to remember it is less than 4 years is the common age group. Talking about the origin or what is the cell of origin of neuroblastoma, remember they are derived from neural crest. As the name itself suggests, neuroblastoma, they are derived from the neural crest. You may be knowing some other disorders which are derived from the neural crest. For example, Hirschsprung disease and neurofibromatosis. So because they are having a common origin, it's a very common sense to understand that Hirschsprung disease and neurofibromatosis would be associated with increased risk of neuroblastoma, and that's a question often asked in your exams. Okay, right. Now talking about the site of neuroblastoma, as I already told you, the most common site is the adrenal gland, especially the adrenal medulla. Suppose they ask you what is the second most common site, look at the area where I am highlighting now. What is this? It is something which is surrounding the vertebral bones. What is that? Yes, it is paravertebral or paraspinal sympathetic plexuses. Paraspinal sympathetic plexus is a long chain surrounding the vertebral bones. So if they ask you in the sympathetic plexus where it is common, always remember like this: abdominal sympathetic plexus is a more common site for neuroblastoma, followed by posterior mediastinum. Right. So overall most common is adrenal medulla, followed by that it is abdominal part of paraspinal sympathetic plexuses. Right. A little bit about genetics in neuroblastoma. This is very important and often a source of MCQs in your exams, especially in pathology section, where they ask you some genes related to the neuroblastoma. Now first one I would want you to remember is there is something called NMYC. You may be knowing about so many MYCs, CMYC, LMYC and NMYC. In neuroblastoma it is a NMYC, you can remember N for neuro like that. Now this is an oncogene which is associated with neuroblastoma. So definitely whenever there is NMYC amplification, it is going to be associated with a poor prognosis in neuroblastoma. So NMYC is something which is important for you to remember. Second is chromosome 1q deletion is also seen in cases of severe cases of neuroblastoma, or in other words, chromosome 1q deletion confers poor prognosis in neuroblastoma. Again, I will repeat these when I tell you about the prognostic factor. As of now, remember NMYC and chromosome 1q. Okay, what is something new? Okay, which is being updated in the textbooks for you to remember is something called as ALK mutation. ALK mutation. What does this ALK stand for? Anaplastic lymphoma kinase gene. This is called ALK gene. Obviously, a mutation in this is going to be associated with poor prognosis. So this is something new which I would want you to remember for the exams, called ALK or anaplastic lymphoma kinase gene mutation. And this is supposed to be associated with familial cases of neuroblastoma. In a family you see neuroblastoma cases occurring, then this gene mutation is highly likely in that particular family. Little bit about the pathology of neuroblastoma. When the biopsy is taken and seen under microscopy, what is the first picture depicting? Yes, this is a sea of blue cells which is called as a small round blue cell. And I am sure that you must be knowing that the small round blue cell tumor is not only suggestive of neuroblastoma, it is also suggestive of all other blastomas. What are the other blastomas? Yes, nephroblastoma, medulloblastoma, of course neuroblastoma, any other? Retinoblastoma, hepatoblastoma. All the blastomas will be associated with small round blue cell tumors. And any other tumors which can be associated with small round blue cell tumors other than blastomas? Yes, Ewing sarcoma, which is grouped under the category of primitive neuroectodermal tumors. Any other? Rhabdomyosarcoma, and one more is lymphoma, especially non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Right, these are the differential diagnosis of small round blue cell tumors. I have seen so many students using mnemonics to remember this small round blue cell tumor, which is not at all required. Just remember all the blastomas and Ewing sarcoma, rhabdomyosarcoma as well as lymphoma. Okay, right. Now look at the second picture, which is here. What can you make out? You can see that there are a rosette of tumor cells surrounding a central structure. These are called as a pseudo rosettes. They are actually surrounding something like a neural material which is called as a neuropil. Can you recollect what is the name of this pseudo rosette? Yes, it is called as Homer Wright pseudo rosette. It's called Homer Wright pseudo rosette. Please make a note of this. Homer Wright pseudo rosette is not pathognomonic of neuroblastoma. It can also be seen in medulloblastoma as well as primitive neuroectodermal tumors. Alright, let's come to the clinical features. As you may be expecting, an abdominal tumor is going to be presenting with abdominal mass. But please remember, most commonly these tumors are asymptomatic. Most commonly these tumors are asymptomatic. Okay, right. It can present with a firm abdominal mass. And one more point to be noted is that this abdominal mass can cross the midline also. Why this is important for me to remember? Because it helps to distinguish from another intra-abdominal tumor, which is Wilms tumor, which is usually confined to that part of the kidney alone. It does not cross the midline, whereas neuroblastoma can cross the midline, and it's an important differentiating point. Okay, right. So what are the other features? Many a times it is actually these paraneoplastic syndromes which bring the attention of neuroblastoma rather than the tumor itself. So some of the important paraneoplastic syndromes associated with the tumor are: one is Horner syndrome, especially in case of this sympathetic plexuses, okay, involving this head and neck region. They can present with Horner syndrome, okay, which is going to present with ptosis, meiosis and anhidrosis. One more important paraneoplastic syndrome, which is also an important paraneoplastic syndrome often asked in the exams, is something where the baby has uncontrolled movements of the eyes as well as the hands and the feet, which is what we call it as opsoclonus myoclonus ataxia, which is also called as a dancing hand and feet syndrome as well as dancing eyes. Opsoclonus myoclonus ataxia. This is possibly due to some anti-neural antibodies produced as a part of this body's immune response to this tumor. And because it tells you that the body is responding to the tumor, actually this opsoclonus myoclonus ataxia is associated with a favorable prognosis. It's a very important point. Always we see that paraneoplastic syndromes have got a worse prognosis, but here remember favorable prognosis. And this is something which is often highlighted and asked in as multiple choice options in your exams. Opsoclonus myoclonus ataxia is a favorable prognosis in neuroblastoma, and usually it occurs in children less than 1 year or infants. This is something which you need to remember. The more aggressive forms of neuroblastoma can also present with metastasis, as could be expected. And please note for your exams, the most common site of metastasis is bones. Most common site of metastasis is the bones, and it is associated with lytic lesions in the bone, where the baby can have limping and bone pain, and this is what we classically refer to as Hutchinson's syndrome in neuroblastoma, which is due to metastasis to the bone. Then extensive liver metastasis is what we call it as Pepper syndrome. Are able to follow this? So these are some of the names given to symptoms associated with metastasis due to neuroblastoma. A very important negative point to be remembered is that neuroblastoma metastasis never involves or uncommonly involves the brain and lungs. So metastasis is rare to lungs and brain, that you need to remember. Okay, right. Sometimes the metastasis can also be to the skin, causing multiple bluish discoloration over the skin, what we call it as a blueberry muffin lesions. When it is present in the neonatal period, it can also be confused for what other condition can be present with blueberry muffin lesions other than this neuroblastoma. Yes, it can also be confused for torch infections also, which can also have a blueberry muffin appearance, especially congenital rubella syndrome. Suppose there are metastases to the orbit or the retrobulbar tissues, it can also have this appearance. What is this? Yes, this is called as a raccoon eye appearance. You might have heard about raccoon eye appearance following head injury, especially the basilar skull fractures and all. But also remember, raccoon eye appearance can also be a feature of metastatic disease in neuroblastoma. So these are the very important presentations of neuroblastoma. But please remember, even though it is an abdominal mass, it is usually asymptomatic, and it is more often the paraneoplastic syndromes which are the actual presenting features of neuroblastoma. Talking about the investigations in neuroblastoma, obviously imaging will be a very important role in the diagnosis of neuroblastoma. You can do a CT or MRI. Obviously, MRI is going to show more finer details of the tumor and is usually the investigation of choice. What I have given in the picture is the CT picture, which shows the tumor. And what are you seeing in the tumor? It is calcification. And presence of this calcification is supposed to be a very important diagnostic clue to neuroblastoma, because in Wilms tumor, which is also similar location, okay, like a neuroblastoma, there calcifications are very rare, but calcifications are going to be very common in case of neuroblastoma. And one more differentiating point is that this neuroblastoma can cross the midline, as I told you before, whereas Wilms tumor usually does not cross the midline. So on imaging, these two important features serve to differentiate between the two conditions. Okay, right. So what are the markers which can be detected from a neuroblastoma? Okay, neuroblastoma is more like a neuroendocrine tumor. So it starts secreting catecholamines and its metabolites. So that is why you can have urinary markers like homovanillic acid and valine mandelic acid. Okay, right. And you might have heard about this markers even in another condition called pheochromocytoma, which is also a tumor arising from the adrenal medulla. So they cannot be called as specific markers. So if I ask you the question, which is a specific marker of neuroblastoma, then your answer is going to be neuron specific enolase. Neuron specific enolase. Make a note of it. This is a very possible question in your exams. Neuron specific enolase. Okay, right. Now, in case of metastasis, one of the important investigation to be done is something called as MIBG scan. That is supposed to be a best test to detect the metastasis in neuroblastoma, which is a radionuclide test, and it is actually the meta-iodo-benzyl guanidine scanning. This is useful for metastasis. That also has to be remembered. But primary imaging investigation of choice is MRI. Specific tumor is neuron specific enolase. These points have to be registered in your mind. Talking about the staging of neuroblastoma, it is based on International Neuroblastoma Staging System, wherein stage 1 is a completely resectable tumor without involvement of any lymph nodes. It's a completely resectable tumor. Stage 2 is something which is not completely resectable, but the point to be remembered is it does not cross the midline. It can be again divided into 2A and 2B. In 2A, lymph nodes are not affected. I am talking about ipsilateral lymph nodes. And in 2b, the lymph nodes are affected. Ipsilateral lymph nodes are affected. Then stage 3 is when it crosses the midline. Neuroblastoma crosses the midline, you call it as stage 3 neuroblastoma. And stage 4 is a widespread or disseminated neuroblastoma. This has to be remembered. Now, what is this very peculiar one, which is stage 4S? Remember, this is seen in children less than 1 year, infants. That is where it is present. It actually refers to a tumor which would be otherwise classified as stage 1 or stage 2 tumor. That means it is not crossing the midline. However, there is involvement of skin, liver and bone marrow. Okay, so it is appearing to be like an aggressive tumor, is it not? Because there is involvement of skin, liver and bone marrow. But the point to be noted is it is exclusively seen in children less than 1 year. And why this is very, very important is because these stage 4S tumors are supposed to have one of the most favorable outcomes or favorable prognosis. And there are instances, okay, quite a lot of instances where this tumor has even regressed spontaneously also. So that's why I am saying stage 4S is supposed to have a most favorable outcome. So they can give you this option in the question, which of the following is not associated with a favorable outcome, and they may just give you this option also, 4S. Remember, 4S is associated with a favorable outcome in neuroblastoma. Now, the newer staging system has slightly remodeled this staging. How? They have used the terminologies like this. Stage 1 is now called as L1, stage 2 and 3 is called as L2, stage 4 is called as M, and stage 4S is called as MS. This is the modification they have done. This is very important for you to know because the upcoming questions may not use the older staging 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. They may just be using L, M and MS. So that was about the staging system. Now talking about the treatment, L1 and L2, which are localized tumor, they are going to be treated by surgery alone. And the advanced forms, which is the M, MS or stage 3, stage 4 and all, is going to be treated with a combination of surgery plus chemotherapy and usually with associated requirement of radiotherapy as well. Usually the chemotherapy regimens would include cisplatin as well as cyclophosphamide. Though other drugs are also used like etoposide and doxorubicin, at least you need to remember the combination of cisplatin and cyclophosphamide, which are the prime agents in chemotherapy for neuroblastoma. Right. Now this is a very, very important slide, often asked as MCQs in your exam. What are the prognostic factors in neuroblastoma? Remember, as I told you before itself, age less than 1 year or infancy is a very favorable prognostic marker. Early stages, stage 1 and stage 2 obviously will be having a good prognosis. Also remember stage 4S, where the spread has occurred to skin, liver and bone marrow, but it is child less than 1 year, then also it's a good prognosis. And hyperdiploidy is also associated with a good prognosis. Poor prognosis obviously would be age more than 1 year, advanced stages 3 and 4, hypodiploidy, and as I told you in the beginning itself, N-MYC amplification and chromosome 1 deletion. And if they ask you which is the most important variable or which is the most important parameter in prognosis of neuroblastoma, your answer is going to be age. This is a very, very important question. It is not the stage, it is the age of the child which is the most important prognostic factor, being less than 1 year into good prognosis and more than 1 year into poor prognosis. That is very, very important. Suppose age is not mentioned in the question, they have just given you the genetic factors. Among the genetic factors, which is the most important parameter? Your answer is going to be N-MYC amplification. This is also an equally important question. Among the genetic factors, which is the most important marker Answer is N-MYC amplification. N-MYC amplification means poor prognosis. These 2 points have to be registered in your mind. I was telling you about some recent advances in the form of a revision in the staging system. Now some recent advances in the treatment also. One of the very important thing which has come into picture is autologous stem cell rescue, where the patient's own stem cell can be used as a remedy, and this is in case of advanced stages where the patient is not responding to the conventional treatment. And also recently FDA has approved this monoclonal antibody called dinutuximab. So what is this dinutuximab? This dinutuximab is an anti-ganglioside antibody. Okay, this is based on the fact that 99% of the neuroblastomas express GD2 receptor on their surface. So dinutuximab is an anti-GD2 monoclonal antibody which is going to cause antibody dependent cytotoxicity as well as complement dependent cytotoxicity, thereby killing the neuroblastoma cell. So this is dinutuximab, which is a very potential question for the upcoming competitive exams. So that was about a short description of neuroblastoma along with the recent advances. Hope you have liked this video. Please subscribe to this channel and press the bell icon to get notified of the new videos as and when they are posted. And please feel free to share with your friends, and also if you have any comments, please put it in the comment section below. Thank you and have a good day.